Hello everyone, it's Ren here. Welcome to my room, guys. I hope you're well today. Today we're gonna move to one of my favorite topics, which is the topic of writing, specifically fictional writing, but also non-fictional. Now, before I move on to my topic, remember that when it comes to non-fictional writing, I have written a book on the INFJ type, The Ecstatic Soul, which is the deepest investigation of the INFJ you'll find online. If what you are reading online these days is getting you diminishing return on an investment, this is the next step that you want to take for full exploration of the INFJ consciousness and associated existential opportunities and challenges. It's available for less than $10 at the Amazon links in the description box below. If your country is not included, just drop me a line and I will get back to you. You have the choice between an ebook format and a paperback format. The paperback looks like this. It's gorgeous. It's a short, concise, but profound book that I'm very proud I wrote. I also have on my Amazon a novella called The Interview, which is a book of fiction I published a year before The Ecstatic Soul. So I published The Ecstatic Soul in September of 2021. The Interview was published, I think, in September of 2020. So the chronology continues to be illustrated like this. There might be an upcoming book in September 2022. So this September, we'll see if I manage to be productive enough to achieve that, and if my professional, demands allow me to. But whether it will be a book of fiction or a book of non-fiction, such as a sequel to The Ecstatic Soul, remains to be seen. I like to keep the mystery alive. Like I said in recent videos, I definitely have ideas for the sequel. But I also have a couple manuscripts of fictional writing that I'm working on. So, there are possibilities, different possibilities offered. I have a bit of experience with writing, and I would like to give you guys some advice if you guys are ever tempted to go for the written word. Now, I have a strong belief that the written word is a very powerful means of expression for INFJs beyond the simple spoken word. Now, the spoken word, it's great. And a lot of INFJ YouTubers are online and they deal specifically with the spoken word. And some of them have quite intricate videos and very popular videos and popular channels, and smaller channels, which nevertheless have a very sort of strong following. So INFJs are doing quite well, but there's something that you might have noticed, essentially. And it's not actually that difficult to summarize. It's that one of the ingredients of having like a reasonably successful YouTube channel is to be able to reach out to an audience, to manage to make followers loyal to you, and then get attention and get more and more followers. That, in Jungian terms, would be associated to a pretty significant extent with an extroverted function. That's why you have a lot of anti-dominants and SE-dominants who are very popular YouTubers. Now, when you consider the first most developed extroverted function of an INFJ, the function is extroverted feeling. Now, extroverted feeling is a great function to develop, and to use it in order to get across to new audiences is a wonderful thing to do, but it is not the dominant function of the INFJ. The dominant function of the INFJ is introvert intuition, and my contention is that in order for an INFJ to be successful on YouTube, a platform dominated by the spoken word, they have to, if not repress, at least conceal their NI somewhat. And, that's probably why Frank James is sometimes this type is questioned. I myself can't say that I can see for certain in the more recent Frank James stuff that he's an INFJ type. But it could very well be because in the very nature of his ambitions with his channel dictate that he represses introverted intuition. And you'll observe that with a lot of different INFJ YouTubers, is that they might be able to talk about introverted intuition, but whether they are bathing in introverted intuition when they're making videos is a very controversial point. I myself believe that that almost never happens. If you want to have a display of introverted intuition, you kind of have to pick up a book by Carl Jung and open it and read it, or visit a blog by an INFJ author and read him or her. It's very difficult to carry the kernel of introverted intuition in words, partly in the spoken word, partly because the spoken word has to be articulated quite quickly into sentences in order to communicate verbally, whereas the contents of NI are not easily articulable in this way. Time is needed for the individual to make sense of them, and it's a lot easier to do that in writing, because you can spend a bit of time with your intuitions and then manage to articulate them as well as you can through metaphor, through analogies, through symbols, and so on, like Jung does, and like so many great INFJ fictional writers do, like Hermann Hesse. Hermann Hesse is perhaps the best example of this, because his writing is very clearly NI dominant, but you also see this in writers like Dostoevsky, for instance. So that's kind of an argument for the relationship between writing and the cultivation of an authentic INFJ way of life, which would be in tune with what I would call a de-alienated consciousness or an enlightened consciousness. In other words, to distance yourself from the risk of either dismissiveness or evasiveness. Nothing's better than embracing the written word. So it's not about really just a worshipping or a celebration of writing for its own sake. In and of itself, there's nothing better about writing than about speaking or about painting, about doing things, practical things in the world. From the point of view of the INFJ consciousness dominated by a function that is in itself cryptic and mysterious, the written word, the time it affords you and the creativity it affords you to unfold the interpretations of those intuitions is clearly superior to anything that could be achieved in the spoken word. Hence, the possibility then of writing non-fictional works and fictional works. I think here the relevance of NI is this. If you're writing non-fictional works or fictional works, what you want to do in order to stand out, first of all, why do you want to stand out? You want to stand out because you want to be able to promote your work. Unless you want to write for yourself. Now, if you want to write for yourself, that's perfectly okay, you write for yourself. But if you are writing books that you would like to, or, you know, sometimes it could just be articles, blogs, or books that you want to get an audience for, you need to stand out. And the best way to stand out is to play on your strength. In other words, every person, when they write, has particular strengths and particular weaknesses. Where the strength is, if you like, their comparative advantage over other authors, their added value, what they have that others don't have. So the best way to stand out is to minimize their weaknesses, to work on, say, the style of your writing, to make sure that you don't write in the style that's too impenetrable or too simple, that you don't make basic mistakes, that your sentences are not too repetitive, you know, that you try to be as graceful as possible. But that's about minimizing your weaknesses, because where you're weak is never going to be the domain where you stand out. But it's important to minimize those weaknesses or to neutralize those weaknesses in order to not let them cover up and disguise what does make you stand out. And what's going to make you stand out, it's going to be individual in every case. But it certainly will have to do with introverted intuition, because it is your dominant function. It is the core, like I said, nebulous, mysterious, cryptic gate of access to the contents of the unconscious, the archaic images, as Jung calls them, or the archetypes. The exploitations of these through symbolization are going to be your added value. Like, this might sound like it's not made for a very broad audience, but you're always going to find an audience. And nowadays, with the globalization of the world, even for somewhat esoteric or symbolic or mystical topics or abstract topics, you're always going to find an audience, and sometimes you can find a large one. If you look at Jung and if you look at the plethora of authors nowadays on YouTube and in books and elsewhere influenced by Jung, you can see that they are able to get there to a level of notoriety that allows them to live from that and to definitely reach to a lot of people. But the exploitation of the NI intuitions is fundamental, which implies going in a direction that would not be the direction followed by a YouTuber who were contented to speak through the spoken word, where the extroverted functions are probably going to have to be a little bit cranked up at the expense of something like NI, which is a function hard to express directly in the immediate and spontaneous spoken word. Writing is a formidable way to cultivate not just your intuitions, because to cultivate NI, which is a slightly more passive thing, and passive not in any sense derogatory, but something that you're a little bit more receptive to rather than pushing, you can do that with art. Art is a great way, or obviously through a walk in nature and through many things. Art is great. I recently suggested a few movies that you could check out. I think they're great for NI users. In the past, I suggested some film, some music as well. That's good for cultivating NI. So that's great for allowing NI to circulate around the walls of your psyche and harden itself, soften itself in other parts and become more concrete. Allow the cryptic nature of it to become a little bit more accessible. But writing, which is a more proactive activity by definition, allows you to harness and hone the expression of your understanding of those intuitions. So it's not about cultivating intuitions, it's about expressing them. And the manner of expressing intuitions is important because it's also what allows you to realize your individuality as an INFJ person and to be an authentic self from the viewpoint of the INFJ consciousness. So I'm not here really talking about technique, I'm talking about playing on your strengths. So do not be tempted to imitate an NE dominant when you're writing fiction or an FE dominant. Do not be tempted to when you're writing nonfiction. If you want to write an analytical work, be more like Jung than like an INFJ who tries to imitate an INTP and play on their TI as if TI was a dominant function. That's not where you're going to make a difference ultimately. You can have strong TI and TI can support your arguments, but your strength lies in your NI. And if there is some uncertainty that comes from not being quite sure what NI is trying to say, learn to coexist with it, live with it, and allow itself to unpack its meanings over time and write everything down, even if it sounds vague at times and esoteric and mysterious. Just go on with it, and you'll notice that over time, if you continue doing this, the structure will slowly impose itself. It really begins with setting down the structure and then having the intuitions fill these boxes. You know, that's much more akin to an NE-TI or TI-NE process. With an NI-FE process, with TI as tertiary, usually you allow the intuitive content to flow out and structure itself little by little. And most of the works by NI-dominant writers, whether fictional or non-fictional, the great ones, they're never characterized by a watertight structure. It's not what they are supposed to incarnate anyway. That's not where the added strength is. So do not stress about this. It's normal. Try to write one of the most influential quotes in my writing career has been, and I can't remember the man, but I thank him, is to say, write the truest thing you've ever written. That's the advice to a writer, to write the truest thing. Be absolutely honest with yourself in terms of the contents of your life, but also in terms of the contents of your psyche. All right, if you enjoyed this video, give me a like, drop a comment, let me know what you think, and consider subscribing. And I'll talk to you soon, guys. Bye-bye.